the movement of the stars, but the idea that the precision of stellar movement could be extended down to the oceans and the animal life, that's a post-Cartesian ideal for sure. McLuhan said that the citizen is a creation of print. The public is the creation. There was no public in the Middle Ages. You don't have a public unless you have books or their derivatives. The idea of audience, these things that are so basic to us, the idea of interchangeable parts in the manufacture of all kinds of objects, that's from print. So forth and so on. Similarly, television had hidden impacts on sensory ratios. McLuhan, strangely, his interpretation of television was that it restored us to a medieval sensory ratio. He said that print was an ear culture, and that television is an eye culture, that he believed the TV screen was more like a page of medieval manuscript than either was like a printed book, because he said in the case of the TV screen and the medieval manuscript, you must look. You must look. In the case of the book, you do not look, you read. And reading is a completely different function than looking, and creates different ratios in the senses. The emergence of the laws of perspective in the late in the 1460s must have burst over the consciousness of European humanity like a paradigm change. When they first began doing perspective, they manufactured for the art schools in Italy these things called perspectographs that would project a recessional grid onto a canvas so people could learn how to do it. Well, we do it absolutely unconsciously. I mean, for us, the laws of perspective are a fact of nature, and yet they were discovered by an advanced group of thinkers less than 500 years ago. That's odd.
What do you mean by you mean the laws of perspective, like that things farthest away from you appear smallest?
Right, that was the breakthrough. So he said, gee, I never noticed that quite before. You're right. And, someone like Piaget has studied this phenomenon in the development of the drawing styles of young children, and believes then that a child essentially, in the spirit of the old saw that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, the child develops through these cultural phases, from the iconic hieroglyphic to the flattened, I can't remember the art historical term, and then, lo and behold, the perspective locks in and the child can see.
Is that to say that kids who draw in the before they realize about perspective are not seeing perspective?
That's the assumption. So let me see if I did my list. I didn't say transcending the calculus, but it's down here, but I think we've flayed the history of mathematics enough. Well, yeah.
It's interesting how theology is going to show up in all this mix, because you've mentioned all these various disciplines, ways of seeing, and I'm curious if whether we're going to start to create a paradigm that is not theological so much, but a way of seeing the world as, using the word spiritual, using that word and attempting to somehow see the world in that light with, this new way of seeing, this new way of... I'm curious how that will translate itself.
The freedom and law bit the God of that universe is the blind watchmaker, who made the universe, who set it going, and who went to Idaho or something. The God of the habit and novelty world is Gaian. Everything is pictured organismically. Everything is pictured as subsets, fractal subsets of other things. And I think that Gaian goddess will empower feeling that the blind watchmaker doesn't. I mean, the only hope in Christianity, and it's a kind of a footnote, is that the blind watchmaker will someday return or send a representative, and then that'll be good. But in the meantime, you are just shit out of luck. You have to sort it out on your own, The Gaian thing is more congruent with the way agricultural and Aboriginal peoples all over the world have always imaged nature. It's a curious thing, the Western commitment to abstraction. It's a unique cultural set. If you are at all familiar with the Maya civilization, they achieved great things in mathematics and in technical understanding of city planning and coordination of large-scale tasks and this sort of thing. But they never left the woods in a certain sense. Their buildings are adorned with floral ornament. They remained shamans through the high classic. They remained bound by huge public ritual and spectacle and this sort of thing. And Western civilization, this freedom thing, and then this God who went away and abandoned us, the blind watchmaker, this all set us up for an entirely different kind of cultural style. And I don't judge it. I mean, I think the accomplishments of Western civilization stagger the mind, but they are it's like a mad child. The toys created by the mad child of Western civilization should clearly be turned over to Mum for checkout and application, because left in the service of the childish worldview of Western civilization, these things are just tools for polluting the environment, decimating the cities of your enemies, so forth and so on.
So you've outgrown the technologies that have so well served us.
Yeah, I think it's very clear that technology has become a demon. Right. That probably the moment is, when the first atomic pile was lit. Right. And certainly at Alamogordo, Fermi was appalled. He said, this is a dark moment for the human race. In spite of the fact that it meant the end of fascism and all that, on a scale of 100, 1,000 years, it meant the genie was out of the bottle. Never again would human beings live without the power to wreck the planet. Well, so that's enough of that. Anybody want to say anything, or shall we pack it in here today? You can turn it any way you like, but I think it's interesting because there's been a lot of talk over the years about the new paradigm, and there have been small paradigms which have claimed to be